Good evening and welcome again to Ultimate Medical Academy. I am Instructor George, and tonight we are going to be talking about finalizing your writing. Super excited tonight to be able to share some information with you that I believe will be helpful. I believe that will be um, great for you to actually take advantage of and be able to implement. As we prepare tonight to talk about finalizing your writing, we're going to be focusing on three main things tonight. One, assessing writing quality, revising writing content, and then editing mechanics in writing. Tonight is really a wonderful night. I think that everyone should be at a place right now in their course where they are at this stage where they're just getting ready to, really assess the work that they've put together, the information that they have actually secured, that they were able to source out. And then, of course, looking at what can they change, what can they make better, is there any errors in there? Sometimes when we are putting a piece of writing, or even in our communication, when we're putting that together, sometimes we neglect the stage where we really have to go back and dive deeper and see if what is actually being said is what we want to have said. you know is my point coming across correctly? Even looking at the content and the information that we've secured, the material, is it good enough? Is it credible? Is it quality? Is it what needs to be said to our audience? Connecting, really staying at a place where we can keep our audience engaged. And then lastly, is there any errors? I mean, one of the biggest things for me, as growing up when I was in school, I used to always hear our teachers say, "Did you review your work? Did you review your work before you submit it? Did you review your work before you know, put your pencils down and say, 'Oh, I'm done, I'm finished.'" And really what they're trying to do is they're trying to get you in a habit of looking over your work, so that way you can be able to go back and see if there's anything that needs to be changed, so that you can question the things that you have put down. And then lastly, so that you can be able to recognize if there are errors, and if you have made those errors, and of course for you to be able to go and make those necessary changes. All right. Now, where are you in your writing? As I said before, you should be at that place where this is the stage where you are. This is the stage after working all these weeks of building and putting together a piece of work, a piece of article, an essay. You should be at the point where you are ready to assess. You are ready to think through some of the things that you have done. Okay. So by now, you should be at a place in your writing where you are ready to get to the final steps, and this is where we are finalizing our writing. You have brainstormed your ideas, you have formulated focused concepts, and you have secured your facts from credible sources. Now you have put everything into its proper place. You are ready to assess, revise, and edit. And there's some things that I did tonight that were intentional just to see if you would even recognize them, right? All right. And so I'm hoping that you're paying close attention. One of the things I want us to do tonight is I want us to, and if you haven't done this, for the past 4 weeks, tonight I want you to stop for a second, and I'm going to give you a minute to do so. Stop for a second and just get out a sheet of paper, get out a notebook, get out a notepad, get a pen, a pencil. And tonight I really want you to take notice of some of the information that I'll be going over tonight, and really think about how what I am sharing, if these things are any challenges of yours that you have had in your writing before. And even, if it was never a challenge before, I want you to think about, how can I make my writing greater? Um, Real writers make their writing greater by practicing to put things in place all the time. Meaning, anything that I need to do, I want to do it well. And so I'm going to practice to do it well so I can become good at doing it well. And that's what I want tonight. So tonight, I want to encourage you to get a notepad, a notebook, a pencil, a journal, and I want you to take notes, because my goal at the end of this presentation is to ensure that when you walk away from listening to this presentation, that you, one, you understand how to finalize your writing, you understand the steps that it will take so that you can actually finalize your writing, you will be able to understand what it looks like, what it sounds like, to be able to understand credible sources and how you can differentiate between what is credible and not. And then how you can actually, you know, make those mechanical changes to your writing that will not necessarily uh, change the message, but it will enhance the message. And then, of course, overall, really looking, diving deeper and looking at the approach that you're using, the information that you're using to share with your audience. So I'm going to give you a quick minute to grab that pencil, grab that pen, grab that journal, that notebook, that notepad, so that you can actually be able to take notes tonight. All right. So, the first thing we're going to be talking about tonight is basically assessing your writing quality. All right. Now, when we talk about assessing your writing quality, we're looking at ensuring that the information that you are going to share with your audience is valuable and of interest to your audience. All right. As you assess, you want to start looking to see if the information is true, if the information is accurate, if the information is credible, and if the information is valid. Why are we doing all of this? Well, number one, the first thing that we're doing is we want to make sure that the information is valuable and of interest to our audience. When we think about assessing writing quality, that's what we're doing. Now, here's the thing. I know that you're at the stage where you're finalizing your writing, but in the brainstorming stage, you should have also done this as well. Whenever you are preparing to write any piece of document, any piece of writing, you should already be thinking about your audience from the perspective of who they are, what is their background, what are some things that bring them together that you can compare and contrast with them, and then among them, and then lastly, you want to think of what interests them. What are some things that might be of interest to them? There is no sense in putting together a piece of writing for an audience that you are not connected to. If you're not connected to that audience, what is going to happen is simply that you are going to be disconnected from them. You're going to waste their time. And not only that, but more than likely the feedback that they will provide about your presentation will not be nice. Now, let me also say this. There are times that I personally have went to hear different people speak about different things that I had no interest, absolutely no interest. But what I will say is that I walked away with a fresh perspective of what I thought I knew. Two, I learned something new. And three, now I have a different perspective. I have a different idea. My mindset has shifted in regards to that topic. Could it be a topic that I was interested in subconsciously? No. It just simply means that I had no idea that this even existed. This was interesting, right? But will it always be this way? No. And so as you prepare your writing, you want to think about your audience. Think about the things that matter to them. Think about the things that are meaningful to them. What's in it for them when they listen to your presentation? What are you offering? What are you giving to them? All right. So think about it from that perspective. Now, the next part of assessing your writing quality is really assessing to see if the information is true, if the information is accurate, if the information is credible, and if the information is valid. Let's talk about if it's true. Now, the reason I want to talk about first if it's true is simply because is it true? You know, there are great fiction writers and then there are great nonfiction writers. Where do you fall among the two? You need to know that. Here's why. Because if you are not a very good fiction writer, everyone is going to know. And if you are a great nonfiction writer, then kudos to you, right? The reason I share this is because each type of writing, fiction, nonfiction, has its own place. In your case, if you're trying to connect with an audience that is looking for something that is of interest to them, you want to get to know that audience and you want to make sure that the information that you're providing to them is true. All right. Now, I know that oftentimes I've heard students say to me, well, how am I going to come up with this stuff on my own? Right? Or can I just copy this information from this website that tells me about this? Well, one of the things that I like to tell students is this. That's why it is crucial to go through the brainstorming process. Why are we going through the brainstorming process? So that we can also not only find the information for ourselves to think about what we want to do, but we also want to see how do we connect to the information that we're sharing. There is no sense in providing information to anyone, any type of audience. Could it be your sister? Could it be your family member? Could it be a friend? Could it be your coworker? Could it be an actual audience, right? Live audience, right? There is no sense in providing information to an audience if it does not relate to you in any way. When I was in college, I had to write tons of papers. And the good thing for me was that I was always given the freedom to write about the things I want to write about. But I also wanted to make sure that while I like to write about it and while I think that this is a topic of interest, I also wanted to make sure that I use different techniques, different approaches, and different information that will hook my audience and keep them engaged in what I had to say. My story my personal story was what I used every single time so that I can draw my audience in closer, right? The question is, was the story that I was telling, was it true? Yes, it was true. So basically this story was about um my mom who suffers from epilepsy, right? And she basically went to doctors years and years and years and years, and every time she went to different specialists, they would give her different feedback. At one point, they even said she had half of a brain. One side of her brain was filled with fluid. Um, Another doctor said, "Oh, she has cancer. She has tumors." I mean, then there was a misdiagnosis. I mean, there were so many different feedbacks from different specialists. No specialist said the same thing. So every time I had a class and every time I had a paper to write, I would just write about my story about my mom and how it affected me and the different things. So I would basically it's almost like I could create like a sequel, right? Because there was so much different information that was coming up. But not only that, it was teaching me something too, right? And not only that, it affected me in different ways, and where I was able to relate, I was able to share my experience from the topic, from the specific thing that I was writing about, and I was able to connect with my audience. So again, asking the question, is the information that you're sharing true? That's it. Is it true? Right? Is it accurate? Right? So when I share that information in different classes about the different things that were happening with my mom, and I wrote the paper about tumors and epilepsy and about misdiagnosis in the medical field and all these different things, I wanted to make sure that the information that I was providing was accurate. So one of the things that I did, because I had access to it, was I reviewed my mom's medical records. I also, which I thought was very fun, I think my classes that I did it to enjoyed it. I also walked with my mom's MRI scans, and I had the class look at it, and I had them um, assess for themselves what a normal brain actually looks like, what a brain with a tumor actually looks like, all these different things. And it was really engaging, really fun. But I wanted to make sure that the information that I was providing was accurate. So what I did was I blacked out just kind of the personal information in some of the feedback. I don't know how to explain this, but when you go to the doctor or when you are in the hospital and they discharge you and they give you like these several pages long of what you should do next, what has happened to you, this is how you handle it, kind of thing. So I also walked with some of the that from time to time, and I would black out some of the personal information, and then I would share with the class. I would have handouts and I would share like, hey, in addition to what I'm presenting, in addition to what I'm sharing with you, this is how accurate I am. This is how accurate the information that I'm providing to you is. All right? So I gave them evidence, right? Now, when you are giving them your accurate tale or your evidence, right? Here's the thing. You want to make sure that in order for the information to be accurate, it has to be credible. Accuracy and credibility are two things that work hand in hand. It cannot be accurate if it's not credible. I'm just going to be honest. I know that students fight with me sometimes on this in regards to, well, Instructor George, I don't believe this or I don't believe that. That's just the reality. If it is not credible, it is not accurate. It has to be credible in order for it to be accurate. All right. Now, I know that sometimes students might ask questions like, well, if a doctor said it, is it considered credible because the doctor doesn't actually have an article or a journal on it? Yeah, because they are an expert in that field, in that specific thing. So when we look at if something is accurate, one, we want to make sure it's credible. How do we know that it's credible? Well, it has to come from an expert source, meaning, even if it's not, let's say, for example, even if it's an interview, even if it's an appointment, even if it's a session with a specialist who's an expert in their field, you want to make sure that the people that you're getting the information from, that they are a credible source. They are experts in their field. They have published, they have went through extensive training, so that the information that they're providing to you, you can then in return share it with others. All right. Next, is it valid? Validity basically focuses on the material to support the information in your writing. Okay. It has to be free of bias and it has to basically follow a specific process to create the data. Validity. When I coming to the end of my master's program, one of the tasks, one of the requirements that to complete your master's is to write a thesis. A thesis is, the best way I can say it, it's a long report. I think my thesis was maybe almost 100 and something pages long. Give me one second. My thesis was about 100 and something pages long. And so I share this with you because, is it valid? All right. How did I come up with the data in my thesis paper? How did I come up with, was I able to create this process, right? So that I can collect data and then I can transform, or I can put that data into an actual picture, right? For people to actually be able to see it and read it and understand it and know it. All right. Whenever you are looking at validity, you're looking at, is this information correct? How did they come up with this information? What was the process that was used to basically create the data? That's what we want to know. All right. Here's why assessing the writing of your quality is the quality of your writing is so important. It is important because all these four questions are questions that your audience has the ability and the authority to ask. And that is why it is crucial to understand the scholastic honesty process and policy so that you are not putting yourself in this situation. Is it true? Is it accurate? Is it credible? All right. Is it valid? You want to make sure that under any circumstances that you're thinking about this deeply, deeply. All right. Now, assessing tips. Remove yourself from the content. Sometimes because we created the information, because we're the author of our piece of writing, we often take such ownership that we refuse to remove ourselves from the content and to actually look at the information by putting ourselves in someone else's shoes. I promise you. And I say this very often to students, very often. I say, whenever you're doing a piece of writing, even if you feel like, oh man, this is a great piece of writing, I did such a fantastic job, this deserves an A. What you want to do before you submit that piece of writing is you want to save it, close it, and walk away from it for a few hours or even a day. And I like to say 24 hours. Here's why: you have given yourself time to no longer have that specific assignment, that piece of writing on your mind. You have given yourself time to be distracted with other tasks within your life. And now, once 24 hours has passed, your mind is somewhere else. When you go back to that task, you want to look at that specific piece of writing with a different pair of eyes. You want to look at it as if you are the audience, not the writer, but the audience. You want to look at it as if you are sitting down in the audience and you're receiving this information just like everyone else in your audience. Why? Because if you're able to put yourself in the shoes of the audience, then you'll be able to truly critique your writing and ensure that your writing is exactly the way it needs to be. Is it true? Is it accurate? Is it credible? Is it valid? All right. Next, you want to make sure that you are questioning everything. Why are we telling you to do this? Well, we're telling you to question everything because that's what your audience does. That's what they do. They will question every single thing that you have written in your piece of writing. They will question everything that you have said in your writing. Is it because they have a different perspective? Yes, sometimes, but it's also to see if you have considered other perspectives in your writing as well. All right? You want to make sure that if by any chance you see or you notice things that you can revise, things that you can change, things that you can remove, things that you might want to add some more things here in this section of the paper, you want to make note about the things that need to change. Take notes of the things that need to change so that you can actually go back and change them. Now here's a quick tip that I didn't actually write here. When you are assessing your writing, the first thing you're doing is actually assessing your writing. You are not going in and assessing and making changes at the same time. You are only assessing, you're only critiquing. Then, once you've completed the critiquing and making notes of the things that needs to change, revise, remove and be added, then you can go back and actually do what the critique says, whatever the feedback is that you gave yourself. Then you go back and actually do that. Okay, so keep that in mind. Remove yourself from the content, put yourself in the shoes of the audience, question everything and make notes about the things that need to change. Of course, lastly, after making the notes of things that need to change, go back and go ahead and make those necessary changes. All right. Next, let's look at revising the writing content. All right. Now, revising focuses on looking at the substance and the organization of your writing. You want to check if your ideas are united and your paragraphs are well developed. Now, notice anything different here? Do you realize that assessing the quality of your writing and revising your writing content are totally two different things? Yes, it is. And it is that way for a purpose. The reason why it's this way is because there are several different things that needs to happen when you're finalizing your writing. And one of them is revising the writing content. All right? Well, when we talk about revising the writing content, we want to talk about, are the ideas that I have about this piece of writing, are they flowing correctly? Are they walking hand in hand with each other? Are they best friends? Are they singing the same song? Are they talking the same language? Is it making sense, right? Does it make sense? If it's not making sense, how can I make that change to ensure that the information that I'm providing is making sense? That the information is united, meaning they're walking together hand in hand. It makes sense, it flows well. And then the next thing I want to do is I want to make sure that my paragraphs are well developed. The reason why I'm saying it like that is because you want to make sure that your paragraphs are well developed. I'm going to take you back to the graphic organizer. Why? Because that graphic organizer probably has not been your best friend throughout this entire process. Well, the graphic organizer should have been your friend. Here's why. Because the facts, the details that you secure for each one of your main ideas, those things play a huge role, right? How you write them, how you secure it, it plays a huge role in how developed your paragraphs are going to be. One of the things that I tell students all the time is when you are looking at sources and you're getting information from different sources, even if you want to paraphrase, you want to make sure that even if it's the outline that you're working on, that everything you write it in a complete sentence. Why? Because it makes life so much easier in week 5. And that's just the truth. It makes life so much easier when you get to week 5. Why? It makes life easier because all you're simply doing is transferring the information from one place to the other, right? You're building your paragraphs, your introduction paragraph, your body paragraphs, which consists of 3 paragraphs or more, and then your conclusion paragraph. I want to make sure that you understand what developed paragraphs are. First of all, every piece of writing has an introduction, a body, and a conclusion. Your body of your piece of writing can have a minimum of 3 paragraphs. Here's why I'm saying 3. Because if you are new to writing, and I say new to writing as in the sense of if you are in elementary school and you have to write an essay, sometimes teachers even allow students to write essays or piece of writings that only has one body paragraph. But on your level, a minimum of 3 body paragraphs, right? Each paragraph, meaning your introduction paragraph, your body paragraph number 1, number 2, and number 3, and then finally your conclusion paragraph. Each paragraph should have a minimum of 5 sentences. A well developed paragraph should have a minimum of 5 sentences or more. I suggest, strongly suggest, that when you're putting your paragraphs together that you start thinking about an introduction sentence, 3 facts about that specific main idea that you're talking about in that paragraph, and then a transitional sentence that transitions from one um, main idea to the next, right? The reason I say that is because if you are able to successfully do this, then 100% sure I'm certain that you will have well developed paragraphs. I'm certain that you will be able to successfully put the information that you have secured together and everything is going to be in its right place. All right. One of the things that I want to do here is I want to share with you some revising tips that I know that has been helpful for me and has been helpful for many other students just like you. The first thing you want to do is you want to reread and rethink. Why are we rereading and rethinking? Well, we are rereading and we're rethinking everything that we have written because we want to make sure that it makes sense. We want to make sure that the information is exactly the way it should be. And if there are any tweaks that need to be made, then we can make note of that. All right. We want to rethink our approach. We want to question ourselves. Again, going back to questioning ourselves. We want to ask ourselves, so is what I'm trying to say coming across correctly? Right? Is what it is that I'm trying to talk about, is it coming across correctly? Is it understandable enough? Is it broken down enough for my audience to understand? The next thing you want to do is you want to check your thesis statement. Why are we checking our thesis statement? Well, We are checking our thesis statement to make sure, to make certain that everything that we've said in our thesis statement is being laid out in our piece of writing. Somebody is asking right now, what is a thesis statement? Well, a thesis statement is basically a statement, a sentence that basically tells your audience what you're going to be focusing on in your piece of writing. For example, if I like exotic adventures. Let's say I like exotic adventures. Well, I need to be able to tell my audience in my thesis statement what specific exotic adventures I will be sharing or talking about today and why, right? So you want to make sure that you are clear. I might state specific exotic adventures. And that's really what the thesis statement expects. It expects that you would tell them today we're going to be talking about finalizing your writing. And in finalizing your writing, we're going to talk about assessing the quality of your writing, revising tips, and then of course um, editing mechanics in your writing, right? So those are three different things that we're going to talk about under finalizing your writing. It's the same exact thing. Whenever you write your thesis statement, whatever your main ideas are, they should be listed, they should be mentioned in your thesis statement. All right. Just for those of you who have forgotten, usually the thesis statement is the last sentence in the introduction paragraph, but it can be anywhere in the introduction paragraph. But does it fit well being the last sentence in the introduction paragraph? Yes. Next, you want to look at checking the purpose of your writing. Again, these are things that, yes, you were supposed to do them in the brainstorming stage, but the reason why you're doing it again in finalizing your writing stage is because you want to make sure that you're double checking everything. You want to make sure that when you get to that point where you are in front of your audience, that the information that you're providing is exactly the way it should be, right? So question yourself, find out what is the purpose of me writing this? Why am I doing this, right? And then the last thing you want to do is you want to check your organization and paragraphs. I already went over this with you. Um, if your instructor is asking you to put the assignment in APA format, put the assignment in APA format. Okay, we have another video on writing work in APA format and citing citations. Check it out. Excuse me, but you want to make sure that under any circumstances that you are checking to make sure all your thoughts are aligned well, all your main points are being addressed, and they are organized in such a way that you know what paragraph goes with what specific main idea. All right. And then again, making sure that your paragraphs are well developed, that your facts that you're sharing is in there, but they are complete thoughts. They're not phrases, but they are complete thoughts, complete sentences. All right. Next and last and finally, we're going to focus on editing your mechanics in writing. Now, this section is basically the process that focuses on making sure that everything within your writing looks, sounds, and basically functions correctly before it can be shared with your audience. I'm going to say that again. Editing your mechanics focuses on the aesthetics. Does it look right? Does it sound right? Does it function well before it gets in front of your audience? Why? Well, for example, one of the things I did today was I made some errors. I intentionally misspelled one or two words on three slides. I did that intentionally to see if anyone would even notice, right? Number one. Number two, so that I can make the point of editing mechanics in writing. This is the opportunity for you to get your audience to see, hey, not only am I sharing information with you that is true, that is accurate, that is credible, and is valid, but I'm also sharing information with you that looks right, sounds right, and functions right, right? And so you want to make sure that under any circumstances that you're thinking about your writing, you're really looking at it when you get back to it after walking away from it for 24 hours and you're coming back to take a look at it again. What are some things that stick out to you that may not be correct? sometimes, and I know that this has happened to me, I've had moments where I'm writing, and even though I'm spelling a word correctly, it doesn't look correctly to me. And I have to look in my dictionary and be like, hey, how do you spell this word? Because this doesn't look right. I have it correct, but it doesn't look right. I don't see the red line underneath it that tells me that it's spelled incorrectly. But isn't it safe to check? Isn't it such a good feeling to have the opportunity to just go back and check, to double check, to make sure everything is exactly where it needs to be and how it needs to be? Well, that's what we're looking at here. We want you to get to a place in your writing as you are finalizing your writing. We want you to get to a place of being able to identify and notice when things are not right. Do I have a run on sentence here? Maybe do I need to use a coordinating conjunction here? Or maybe I just need to break this up into three separate sentences, right? Or am I using my grammar correctly? Am I putting down the correct different symbols or different, punctuation marks that I need to use? Am I spelling things correctly? It's okay to ask yourself this question. You're not asking yourself this question to be mean to you, but you're asking yourself these questions to be good to you. Because not only do you want the work that you produce to receive good, feedback, but you also want your audience who is looking at your work, who's assessing, who's looking and who's critiquing you during your presentation or your piece of writing to know that you took the time, you did that, you took the due diligence to do all of these things that needed to be done. All right. You want to make sure that under any circumstances that this is what you are doing. And then lastly, editing tips. You want to find out, does it sound correct? Does it look correct? Is the spelling correct? And is your tone correct? Remember, your tone plays a key role in shaping your message and making sure that your audience can receive this information. All right. And so remember, if it sounds incorrectly, don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to get feedback. Don't be afraid to get help. That's why we have the Writing Center available just for you, so that when you have questions, when you're done completing the first draft of your work, you can submit it for feedback and get some feedback on anything that you find that might need to be changed, okay, or improved or enhanced on. All right. And then now we're gonna wrap up tonight now by just kind of highlighting a few things. Basically, in this lesson, I believe that was really well. I think that you had an opportunity to learn how to assess the quality of your writing, focusing on revising the content and really looking at editing your mechanics, right? And then we want to make sure that under any circumstances that you look back at the notes that you took this evening. Look and see what are some different things in the finalizing your writing process stage that you may have never done before and may want to consider trying this time around. This is going to separate you from those who are good and those who are great in their writing. Always make sure that you are doing your very best to finalize your writing by assessing your quality, revising the content in your writing, and editing any type of mechanics that may be available for you to, of course, change. All right. Tonight, I want to thank you so much for being a part of this wonderful experience. I appreciate you joining us, and I can't wait to see you at graduation. Have a wonderful, wonderful night. All right.